Cries on the streets, from broken promises to bold reforms. One show rises above. From the corridors of power to the cries on the streets, from broken promises to bold reforms. One show rises above the spin. Crestline.
If monkey jumps when the tree is not close, the monkey will break legs.
They used 18 members to impeach a governor instead of 22 members.
The political show that dares to go deeper. Crestline brings the voices, the verdicts, and the vision that shapes our future. Join Rayo, Akinsowon. Tough questions, real answers, no filters. Crestline, where politics speaks.
Good evening and welcome to Crossline, where politics speaks. I'm your host, Rayo Akinsowon. Tonight we turn our focus to one of the most pressing challenges confronting Nigerians' future, the staggering number of out-of-school children. According to UNICEF and UNESCO report, Nigeria has the highest number of out-of-school children in the world, with figures ranging from 10 to 20 million, depending on the source. What does this mean for our development, security, and democracy? And what interventions are working or failing? The conversation continues after this short clip. Take a look.
Begging is luck. Sometimes you get food immediately when you go out. Sometimes you don't.
Thousands of Quranic students are on the streets begging every day. For decades, the Almajiris have been a normal part of life here.
In 2018, I launched what we call the Almajiri Child Right Day. And this is a new day that I initiated to say, look, if nothing happens in the whole year, we have one day that we will force a conversation about these children in national and international policy, So we launched the Almajiri Child Right Day in 2018. And I remember we did the launching in Millennium Park, and we were just a handful of us, just about 18 of us. People didn't come out, but we were not deterred. We said we're going to do it regardless of whether people came out or not. But most importantly, while I was doing all of this, there have been resistance. There are people even threatening me. There have been people even frightening me to say, you run mad. Malams will do for you juju or something, and you run mad. But you can't be talking about this. I mean, I know how I was bullied online by young people in Kano who say I'm attacking their culture. Some people even say I'm not Hausa enough to speak about the issue, that I can't even speak Hausa, So there was that bullying, there was that threat, there was that intimidation. But there is something in me that said, look, you can't just keep quiet about it. You can't turn a blind eye about it. I came in real contact with the situation of the Almajiri's children on the street. And for me, that was when I took the decision to say, look, I will adopt the Bring Back Our Girls advocacy approach to ensure that we bring a spotlight to the issue of the Almajiri children in Nigeria. Gladly, we're here today. I've been pushing that mission for the past 8 years, and I think the results are documented in terms of the impact of what we have done around the awareness creation, around influencing policy, but also direct intervention and support for the children. My name is Mohammed Sabo Keana.
Welcome back from that short break, and this is still Crestline, and our talking point today has to do with children out of school in Nigeria. And to help us unpack this, I'm joined by Mohammed Sabo Keana, founder of Almajiri Child Rights Initiative, a passionate advocate for child rights and inclusive education. Mohammed, welcome to Crestline.
Thank you so much, Chani. Good to see you again.
Oh, yeah, good to see you again. And let's go into the business of the day, talking about children out of school in Nigeria. And let's look at the overview of the issue. And let's begin with the big picture. Reports keep saying Nigeria tops the global chart in out of school children from the perspective as an activist and someone working directly with affected communities. What is driving this crisis?
Thank you so much, and Ayo, for having me in your studio today. Well done for all you do. As you have highlighted in your introduction, the out-of-school crisis in Nigeria is something that is pressing, and the figures continue to change from 10 million to now 20 million, and depending on the source of...
You're talking about UNESCO and UNICEF.
So clearly this figure and the crisis has been with Nigeria for many decades, and unfortunately, instead of the figures to be dropping down, but it seems like it's increasing. In 2019, in 2010, it was around 7.3 to 9 million, then rose to 13.3, and now 20 million. So clearly, it's an issue that we have not been able to address it as a country, and it does seems like our policymakers have not been able to clearly identify what are the root causes, what is driving the issue, and why policies not effectively addressing the out-of-school crisis. So from my perspective, and there are multiple causes of out-of-school children. From the northern part of the country, the Almajiri children, as you know, will constitute almost the highest number of out-of-school children. Okay, some people say they're in informal school, but I mean, we know the kind of school we're talking about, isn't it? Of course, that is the cultural and religious cause, you know. But from a policy angle and perspective, there is also the lack of government accountability that I think is not mostly been talked about. We tend to blame either poverty or religious in the sense of Almajiri, or even cultural, you maybe say child marriage as causes of out-of-school children, all of that. But you see, these are excuses that are used to justify abuses and violations or right deprivation for marginalized group like the out-of-school children. The fourth reason that is causing out-of-school children in Nigeria, in my own, and which I even see as most important, is lack of good governance and accountability in the part of government. I have seen it firsthand in another part of the country where parents are willing for their children to go to formal schools, but there are no schools available. And where even there are schools, is completely
So you are saying that it's not just about classrooms and teachers, but also about systemic issues, from the insecurity in the north to poverty in rural communities. And how bad is the situation on ground? Because you're trying to mention, so how bad is it? Because you have first-hand information about this, not just this paper report, but you have first-hand information about this Almajiri out-of-school children, especially in the northern part of the country. How bad is that?
It's very bad. Like I was trying to explain some of the systemic cause of the out-of-school children that we don't talk about it the most. It's easy for us to keep mentioning insecurity as part of the reason, but yes, insecurity are part of the reason. A lot of the reason, because when there is like the Boko Haram or kidnappings, children don't tend to go to school. Yeah, but even without the insecurity crisis, there are governors' failure that have continued to keep children out of school, and that was what I'm trying to mention to you. Classroom decays across communities. Some communities don't have school at all, you know. So these are systemic issues that government have not been able to address. Government, I know that a lot of governors are making effort building schools and renovating schools, but in rural communities, deep in our rural villages, there are millions and millions of children that are almost invisible. So the issue is very, very...
so you're talking about all over Nigeria, not in the northern part of the country
Not just in the northern part of the country. I mean, we talk to colleagues across the part of the country, we see classroom decays. Although there's disparity in the number between the north and south, the number seems to be much in the northern part of the country compared to the south. The south, some of the we could mention of the issue of classroom decays as well in the south, but it doesn't seem to like prevent children from going to school as much as it does in the north. And the issue of Almajiri is more common in the north, so you can see the number will be much in the northern part than in the south. But generally, the number of out-of-school children, or the issue of out-of-school children is a national issue, but with much emphasis in the northern part of the country because of the socio-cultural and perhaps the poverty angle to it.
All right, this is still Crestline, and if you want to be part of this conversation, you can join me on my Facebook handle, which is right on the screen. And for your contribution, you just hashtag Crestline and drop your comment under the live video. We're still talking about out-of-school children in Nigeria, and then let's look at the politics and policy gaps. You talked about there are a lot of dilapidated schools across the country, and the governors, the government, perhaps they are not doing enough. And I think the last couple of days ago we talked about it on this show about the performances of the governors, the money being getting from the federal allocation, and then how much is being allocated for education. Let's take, for example, in our states across the country. And then let's talk about the politics and policy. Education is, as you know, is a fundamental right, yet the policy response appears weak. Federal and state government often make promises, but implementation is another matter. In your assessment, why have successive government failed to address this crisis effectively?
It's simply because of it has almost maybe a little political or election value to government, to governors, president, and all of that. It has a little electoral value to them in the sense that it doesn't seems to affect, it's not something that will kind of boost their electoral capital in a way. I don't know, because it's you know, you want to wonder why something as important as education and governments, both the federal government and the state government, will not pay attention to it. Not until recently, the education budget in Nigeria used to be less than 5%, you know, for both federal and state level, you know, across the state. So education has never been a priority for our government, both at the federal and the state level, and it's also not it's also not too lucrative again, for them in a way, they don't maybe find it easy to get kickbacks from whatever education initiative or project they will undertake. And so it doesn't seem to be too lucrative for them to like security votes. You know, security will take more than 20-30% of budget, you know, and road constructions, you know. You go to state where there is a lot of millions of other school children, but the state government is building infrastructure, you know, because billions of naira goes there, and they are able to also showcase it during election time to say, this is the capital project I've done, you know, compared to either improving, maintaining, or building classroom in the rural area where people don't see. I remember going to a community in one of the northern states, in Kaduna State specifically. They were complaining to me for more than 15 years. They were asking government to build a classroom for them. They gave a land, but the government said, the UBEC person told them that if the land is not along the road where people can see that government is building a classroom, they will not be, they will not build this, the government will not build that classroom. I have to get a classroom to be built for them, you know. So you can.
How do you do that? How did you do that?
Of course, we got through international donors who gave support to be able to build 3 classrooms for that community. So because of that electoral value of the education, which is not something that is very visible for people, and also the issue of either corruption or, you know, kickbacks for the government, they don't see the value of education for as something that has great urgency for them to tackle. So these 2 reasons for me are some of the reasons why education budget has continued to remain low, and it doesn't seem to be like a priority for our government.
Okay, we see new policies. You mentioned it, and I want to take it from there. Like the Universal Basic Education Program, yet the problem persists. What exactly needs to change in the way government approaches this issue? So,
policies are good, but implementations are better. And you cannot implement a policy that is hard to implement. Okay? And for you, the goal of any policy is to address a problem, but a policy cannot address a problem if it's defective in its what we call policy tools and equipment. So policy tools and equipment are those things that will enable you to achieve your policy goals. Okay? So the UBEC Act, for instance, that you mentioned, which was enacted in 2003, that stipulates that every child should have a free and compulsory education for every child, you know. So that is a policy of Nigeria. But what are the policy instruments and tools to achieve those goals? You know, in one of the provisions of the UBEC Act, it says if a parent does not send their child to school, or if they get an out-of-school child, the parent will be fined, no, 2,000, and then or will be arrested and jailed. So you can so those policy tool, or you know, doesn't really make realistic. It's not realistic, you know. So you need to be able to have effective policy instrument and tool to actualize your policy goal. Now, I mentioned to you earlier on that in many rural communities, children want to go to school, but there are no classes in their community. So that's why I said laws are good, but implementations are better. But you cannot implement if the right tools for achieving that laws are not in place. So we need to heavily invest in issue of access in our country. Up to now, we have deficit of classroom in our community, and is one of the silent drivers of out-of-school
children that we don't talk about mostly, especially in the rural community. And I'll give you an example. India has a population of over 1.5 billion people as of now. As far back as 1993 or 1990 or 92 or thereabout, they have almost achieved almost 99.9 issue of access in their own country. What does that mean? In every rural community, in every 3 kilometers between villages, there is a primary school, and every 6 kilometers there is almost like a secondary school available for children to go. What, of course, may not still be available, maybe dilapidated classroom or teachers and all of that. But if your child wants to go to school, okay, that issue of access is addressed. But you cannot say that for Nigeria. I've been to a place in northern part of the country that you don't see nothing, no form of governance almost existing in the place, and parents will even tell you, okay, what alternative do we have other than to send them to Almajiri school? Because there's no formal school that you're asking us to send our children to. So you can see that we can have good policies, but they are not effective to address the policy goal that we want.
All right, still Crestline, and we're still talking about the out-of-school children in Nigeria. And from what my guest is saying, that the Nigerian government, our state, in general, we're trying to tell the government that they should make education their priority in whatever policy, and the policy to be implemented should be realistic. And we are moving forward, and we talk about the impact on security and development. When children are out of school, they are prone to so many things. Let's connect the dots. Many analysts say out of school children are a ticking time bomb, vulnerable to exploitation by criminal groups, traffickers, and even extremist organizations. Do you see a direct link between Nigeria's education crisis and its security challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. The out-of-school crisis has multiple implications: security implication, democratic implication, developmental implication, among other implications. Security implication, I mean, the connections is very stark and clear, and this is something that has been researched, of the connection between children of population who are not educated being easily used for insecurity activities. So, and it's just a simple analogy, you know. If a child grows up without the opportunity to go to school, it means they will grow up without education, and that means they are not able to think rationally, and it means also that they have less opportunity to be able to be gainfully employed and to achieve or obtain a meaningful paying jobs, you know. And so that exposes them to it makes them as vulnerable and to be used by either extremists, troubling, bad thieves, and all of that. So it's not something that is in the hidden. The implication of this insecurity and out-of-school issue is very, very direct and clear. If children don't have what it takes for them to be employed, the only option they have for them will be to be easily, you know, low into all these insecurity vices. And I will make a direct example that I had 2 years ago, I think. One of the bandit person leader was being interviewed, and he said, "Look at our children. They don't have any form of education, so they cannot even be employed in a government job also. So what do you want them to, and then our cows are no more available. So what do you want them to do? What do you want them, if it's not, the banditry that they're doing? So the correlation between insecurity and out-of-school crisis is very clear, and I think it's well known to the politicians and government.
Okay, so in essence, solving the education crisis is also solving a security crisis. Do you think leaders understand this connection strongly enough?
I think they do, because and they have mentioned it several times. I remember in 2019 when we did a rally around this issue, one of the senators came to the rally and make that connection very publicly. And in the next day, the Senate president also, I think that's when they even make a pronouncement about addressing the Almajiri and out-of-school crisis in 2020 or 19, I think. And they make that direct correlation because they saw the rising case of violence, banditry, phone snatching, thuggery in northern part of the country, and they easily connect the fact that these are children that probably didn't go to school, because if they were at school, if they were educated, they would have been using their knowledge to either look for a job or apply it in something more meaningful than being a security threat to people. So I think they do understand the implication, but somehow they are not taking the kind of action that they need to take to prevent more children from being out of school.
Well, we've highlighted the challenges, and let's talk about the solutions now. You've been leading the Almajiri Child Rights Initiative. Tell us about some of the interventions you were working on, and whether community-based solutions can complement government policies.
Yeah, I mean, so my focus and interest over the years has indeed been around what solution should be available, should be implemented to address this issue of out-of-school children. And the out-of-school crisis in Nigeria is multifaceted. It has different causes. In the southern part and the northern part all have different causes, and the solution may not necessarily be the same, but what is common that I have pointed out earlier on is the issue of access. So the education crisis in Nigeria, especially in the northern part of the country, is one, children are out of school. Secondly, children are in school but are not learning. And then thirdly, the infrastructure decay in form of classrooms and all of that. So these are structural issue, not even structural, they are governance issue, clearly. These three issues are governance issue. I think there is very little how to do with the issue of culture and religion, because with effective governance, with alternative, all of this can be able to fit into place. But what are the things that we are doing, or what are the solution? The solution for me is how can we mobilize community funds to ensure that we complement government effort within communities, within state, and I can narrow it down to the issue of the Almajiri children, because they constitute the highest number of out-of-school children in Nigeria. There are many who have argued that the kind of education intervention for them should be accelerated learning program, where you take a teacher to their Almajiri setup and you do them some few literacy and numeracy program. So for me, I don't usually agree with that approach. I feel we must find a way in which these children are able to have full education, like every other children, full 6 years of education, whether we go back to the Jonathan framework that he did in building, which I think was a basis for us to be able to develop on, we make a specific policy that ensure that these children do not just keep away their right to have this so-called formal education just for the religious education. So for NGOs, we do this accelerated learning program for these children where we go to their setups and do this few months of literacy and numeracy program for them. It does teach them, because some of them get to learn A, B, C, D and all of that. But if you look at the impact of that, what will that, translate to for children, for them as children, those few months of education, few months of literacy program. So while that is something that NGOs like ours are doing as a short-term intervention for them, I strongly believe and feel it's not enough. I strongly feel that we must be able to restructure our intervention to ensure that they have inclusive and non-discriminatory education like every other children, which is, by the way, doable. So in Keana State, what we are doing, especially for the Almajiri children, is that we connect these children in one to the nearest primary school to their Sangayas, or to the Almajiri school. And we were able to negotiate with the Malam for him to adjust their time for reading the Quran. So they are able to go to a nearby primary school, learn with other children, and then come back, and then also do their own Quran education. And this is what I feel would be a more scalable, practical solution to bring Almajiri children to school, rather than doing the accelerated learning, because it does not really translate a lot for them. And the most important thing for me, I also think, is addressing the cause of why these children are out of school, which is issue of access. If there is no access, if there is no school, where will they will definitely be out of school. We must make schools available, maintain the schools, and ensure that we get teachers to be functional, to be available to teach them. So a lot has to do with community, contributing, but also government ensuring that a lot of investment are made to ensure this education input are available for children, especially in those in rural community.
You've done well moving around, especially the northern parts of the country. Are you able to measure your success, the impact after your implementation? What's the impact all about?
So for us as an organization, what we started on was policy advocacy and awareness raising on the need for government to do more around the issue of out-of-school children, especially with the Almajiri children. And the impact, I think everybody who knows what we have worked on and do can tell. Today we have a National Commission on Almajiri and out-of-school children. I have had the privilege of working, contributing to a bill, the first bill that was sponsored by Senator Wamako in 2018. I was the only person that presented on the issue, I think maybe with one other religious organization, I think Keana, on the distance. I've engaged with several governors, assembly members, taking the issue across several platforms, both locally and internationally. And so we have indeed been able to bring critical visibility around the issue, both nationally and globally. And that has translated to a lot of what we are seeing now in terms of both national policy and even international interventions by several organizations focusing on the issue of Almajiri children in the northern part of the country. But not to also say that our activities is what result to a lot of things, but clearly we have been able to contribute in that policy level. But even indirectly, we have, of course, enrolled a lot of the children, both IDPs and Almajiri, to school. In fact, one of our students under one of our program called C2C, she's about to go into the university. We've been supporting and tracking her progress right from 2016. Yeah, and now she's about going to a university from primary to secondary, and she's about going to a university, and we have several of them across the state, you know. So, the impact of also empowering some of the parents within their community, just to encourage them to keep their children within their community, so that they can be able to go to school within their community. So these are some of the direct impact of our activities over the years.
I know, Mohammed, you don't really blow your trumpet, you know, and I must commend you for what you are doing. You started that movement, the Almajiri, the right for Almajiri child and all that. Tell us about it. That was far back, but it's really got the international attention, and then people are now looking towards the Almajiri children, especially in the northern parts of the country. Tell us about it. I must say thank you for doing that great initiative in the first place.
Of course. When it started, I was one of the members of the Bring Back Our Girls campaign. And while advocating for the Bring Back Our Girls campaign, I was also interested in, okay, what led to the issue of Boko Haram crisis, and how children just been available to join the Boko Haram crisis. But of course, not to mention that Almajiri children were those in Boko Haram, no, but the real fact that we have established that children who are not educationally, who didn't go to school, have less hope of, you know, engaging in meaningful life other than violence, you know. So I took interest on the issue and then began to talk about it. And my simple goal then was that, look, we need to have a national conversation on the issue of the Almajiri situation, because I noted very correctly that government wearing the agency to do something was not very, very much then. It was not something like an emergency for us. So I started talking about it, meeting politicians, lawmakers, you know. So in 2018, we launched what we call the Almajiri Child Right Day. And it then became a platform for us to engage with policymakers. And during the first Almajiri Child Right Day, we had a statement from the UN Deputy Secretary General, Mohammed, who released a statement supporting the call for government to do something. Got some ambassadors also to speak up and all of that. And in 2019, we were able to do at least a statewide campaign across the northern part of the country. Members across the northern part of the country engage their state governors. You know, we were having a lot of rallies, town hall across Borno, KB. So it was really something great. And in 2020, we were able to organize almost the first high-level conversation on this thing, where we brought the office of the vice president, the EU ambassador to Nigeria and ECOWAS, the ECOWAS president, the US Secretary General, and Governor Erifai, Governor Ganduje, UNICEF reps, all, you know, for the first time to have that national conversation and international conversation around this issue. And I also had the privilege of also speaking to ambassadors of the European Union, bringing this issue to their attention, just to help us pressure the government to take action or to do something more about it. So, like I said, gladly, we have seen that translate to some of policy actions that we now see in form of the Commission, as well as international NGOs having some programs around the issue. So, yeah, the advocacy on that has gone well, alhamdulillah. But of course, there are children that are still on the street. They are increasing, and so. But now, like I like to tell people, now we have to now do a solution-oriented advocacy. showing what should be the most effective way of addressing it. Because like I told you earlier on, it's easy to have a commission and policies, but when there is no effective strategy to address it, the number can only increase and not reduce.
Mohammed, I really want to thank you for that. And then on the final lap of today's talking point, the way forward, if you had the years of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the state governors right now, what would be your top 3 recommendations to address the out-of-school children crisis in Nigeria?
The
3 recommendations.
Yes, the 3 recommendations has to do with the 3 issue that are the cause of out-of-school children in Nigeria. 1, increased access to education. The schools must, or either the schools or learning centers must be available. If there are no schools or where children have to go and learn, of course they will be out of school. So we need to close that access gap. Okay. 2, we need to also look into the issue of classroom decays in Nigeria. They are also one of the silent drivers of out-of-school children. If this place is without roof and there is raining, we can't be here. The same thing for children who are in rural communities and many other places. If the schools are overcrowded, if the classrooms are decayed, they will leave, they will not be in school. They will contribute to the out-of-school crisis. And the 3 issue is the learning outcomes. Children are in school, but they are not learning because there are no good teachers, or there are fewer teachers, or there are no teachers at all. We need to also invest in teachers training, capacity for teachers, and employing real quality teachers. So on that, I will ask that the salary of teachers should be increased to be more than the salary of those in NMPC and CBN. This will attract better brain to the classroom. But on top of it, we need to be able to improve on social welfare for families in the rural community, because a lot of families, because they cannot support themselves, the little amount for them to support their children to school are not usually available, you know. So the issue of poverty also need to be addressed. So the social safety net that I think they are doing, they need to expand that to reach more homes in our rural community. I think this will help ensure that we reduce the number of out-of-school children in Nigeria.
Together we can fight these challenges, talking about out-of-school children in Nigeria. I'm sure President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the state governors, they're listening to you now, and your implementations is, I hope, is well noted. I mean, your recommendation is well noted. All what we have to do in this country is that we must make sure that we do everything within our capacity, from the government level and also to the parent level, that we must try as much as possible to get our children educated, you know. And I want to really thank you. Nigeria's future rests in the children, but if millions of them remain outside the classroom, then our development, security, and democracy remain at risk. Tackling the out-of-school crisis is not just about policy. It is about political will, community action, and shared responsibility. A very big thank you to my guest, Mohammed Sabo Keana, for sharing his insight tonight. And thank you, our viewers, for joining us on Crestline, where politics speaks. I'm Rayo Akinsowon. Join me again tomorrow, same time. Good night, and thank you for watching.
From the corridors of power to the cries on the streets, from broken promises to bold reforms, one show rises above the spin. Crestline.
If monkey jumps when the tree is now closed, monkey will break legs.
They used 18 members to impeach a governor instead of 22 members.
East.
The political show that dares to go deeper. Crestline brings the voices, the verdicts, and the vision that shapes our future. Join Rayo Akinsowon. Tough questions, real answers, no filters.